Thanks so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. The definition of marriage in America is now in the hands of 9 unelected Supreme Court justices. After a marathon session Tuesday, the court will now decide if it will honor the will of voters in states across the nation or impose same-sex marriage on the entire country. As Paul Strand reports, the key swing vote may be balking at this latest case.
Whenever the justices hear a case dealing with same-sex marriage, partisans on both sides fill the Supreme Court plaza with signs and colorful costumes and lots of yelling at each other.
Jesus loved the sinners, and we're loving you just like Jesus loved the Pharisees. We're telling you to turn. God will not hear your prayers. God does not hear the prayers of the wicked.
You see Orthodox Jews condemning homosexual activity, while pro-gay Jews protest against the Orthodox Jews with signs and songs. All of this effort in the hope of pushing the Supreme Court one way or the other as it mulls these 4 cases rolled into one that could decide whether same-sex marriage is imposed on the entire nation.
What's interesting is whether any of these demonstrators outside or even the lawyers inside will have any effect on the justices. Some analysts say that already 4 on each side of the argument have made up their minds, leaving Anthony Kennedy once again as a swing vote to decide this crucial question: should all 50 states have to recognize same-sex marriage?
The attorney who argued on behalf of the states thinks Kennedy might be leaning towards letting the states and the people decide rather than the justices.
And he said this is the marriage definition that we've had for millennia. How are we in a position that we can decide better than everybody else in the history of the world?
But the attorney leading the charges for national gay marriage said to the justices if they rule against it,
you are constitutionalizing a second-class status for gay and lesbian people. You are endorsing that the families are deficient and inferior.
This lesbian couple contends the nation's ready for gay marriage, except for a misguided few.
People not really understanding that we're just like everybody else because someone somewhere had taught them something different.
And it's hard to feel bad when you know you're right.
But a leading Southern Baptist Convention official disagrees.
The states have spoken on this, and when the people have spoken, they've said they believe that only marriage is a union between a man and a woman.
And Barrett Duke says God sees it that way too.
God defined marriage as a union of one man and one woman. Regardless of what humans decide to do about that, it doesn't change what marriage really is, and the Supreme Court should leave the definition that God has given us alone.
This rabbi warns if the government forces gay marriage on the whole country, it will be an official rebellion against God.
We plead with our government leaders, we plead with our judges, we plead with our fellow people. Let's remember there's a God on the universe. Let's remember there's one ruling us all. Let's remember there is one giving us air to breathe and keeping us alive.
Former lesbian, now pro-life activist Lauren Handy says nationwide government-backed gay marriage will in its way hurt America as much as the court legalizing abortion.
1973 legalized abortion, 1/3 of my generation gone, and so if the court decides in their favor, it's going to be just like that.
That's the kind of hot and heavy emotion same-sex marriage brings out on the Supreme Court plaza.
But inside the court, it's all about the argument. Should the states have the right to decide this, or should the court say all 50 states must recognize gay marriage from this point on? Decision probably comes out in late June. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Supreme Court.
And joining us now with more is Brad Jacob, Associate Professor at the Regent University School of Law. Well, let's get right into it. Do you think we're on the verge of a landmark ruling like Roe versus Wade, as we heard in the piece?
Well, it depends on what you mean by a landmark ruling. Who knows in 10 years whether this case will make much of a difference in terms of marriage. Public opinion is changing. The states may implement same-sex marriage if they want to. This is really a question about federal power, and it's about, is the Supreme Court going to force social change on those parts of the country that aren't going there at this point?
All right. Well, we know that Justice Kennedy has written every Supreme Court decision so far that's pushed the gay agenda forward. He could be the swing vote in this again. What do you think he'll do in this case? Any prediction?
I have no clue. I'm neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet. And Justice Kennedy has sent conflicting signals, both in oral argument yesterday and in the Windsor case, the Federal Defense of Marriage Act, which was the last big gay marriage case. Kennedy sent signals for both sides. At one point in the DOMA case, he said that marriage is a state issue. Marriage should be defined by the states. It's not a federal issue. And at another point, he talked about denying gays and lesbians a fundamental right. So which side of Kennedy comes through when he actually votes and presumably writes an opinion? I can't tell you today.
Wow. Well, if the Supreme Court rules in favor of a constitutional right to gay marriage, how could that affect ministries and religious businesses that don't believe in this?
Well, we're already seeing cases around the country in places where there is same-sex marriage, where a Christian who bakes wedding cakes or prints announcements or rents out a hall for receptions may violate state law or local law if they don't want to promote a gay ceremony. This could go even further. If the Supreme Court finds some kind of fundamental right, then any religious institution, Regent University, where I work, could find ourselves in legal trouble if we don't acknowledge gay relationships as being the equivalent of husband-wife marriages. It could have huge, huge consequences.
Real quickly, if the court does decide that gays do have a right to marriage, what do you think that says to states, especially where voters have decided that that's not what they want in their state?
Well, it's an issue of making the states change what marriage is, fundamentally redefine, because marriage has always been based on that complementarity. As of today, only 11 states have chosen to enact same-sex marriage. But if the Supreme Court says it's a constitutional right, we'll have it in all 50. That means 39 states will have the will of the people overturned.
Indeed. Brad Jacob, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Baltimore leaders say the first night of the city's 7-day curfew worked to calm the violence that erupted only 24 hours earlier. They're now hoping it's a sign of things returning to normal as schools reopen their doors today. But they admit there is still lots of work to be done to repair buildings ruined in the riots and to fix people's heartbreak.
Go home. Is that too hard to do?
Baltimore residents locked arms to join forces with more than 1,000 police officers and 2,000 National Guardsmen to enact the first night of the city's 10 o'clock curfew. Some defiant demonstrators refused to leave, but that resistance lasted only about 30 minutes until officers fired flashbangs and tossed smoke canisters.
I think the biggest thing is that citizens are safe, the city is stable. We hope to maintain it that way.
Tuesday night was a far cry from Monday when rioters torched cars, tossed debris at police, and tore apart businesses. Officers only arrested 10 people Tuesday, compared to more than 400 Monday. It's an image many Baltimore residents and church leaders spent Tuesday trying to erase. They hit the streets to work together to clean.
We are frustrated. We just need to find a better way to deal with it.
In the midst of Monday's chaos, this frustrated Baltimore mother was hailed a hero when Toya Graham spotted her teenage son on live television throwing rocks at police. The single mom marched down the street and fought to drag him home, giving him a severe talking to on the way. She told reporters she didn't want to see her son lost to violence or police brutality like Freddie Gray, the young man whose death in police custody first sparked the protest only a week ago. But some point out, Baltimore's problems are much older and deeper than that death.
This has been going on for a long time. This is not new. And we shouldn't pretend that it's new.
Repairing relations between people and police is going to take time in this city. They now also have to find ways to rebuild businesses.
It breaks my heart because those of us who are from Baltimore know how hard we fought for those resources and those stores.
The Baltimore Orioles are playing an afternoon home game at Camden Yards, but there is a twist. The game will be closed to the public. Only the players and the press will be allowed inside the stadium and not fans. Turning now to Nepal, thousands are still waiting for relief after the 7.8 magnitude earthquake rocked the country Saturday. Today, the death toll is still rising, topping at least 5,000. Across central Nepal, many are still living in the open without clean water or sanitation more than 3 days after the quake. Amid the destruction, there is word of a new disaster. A mudslide near the quake's epicenter has left as many as 250 people missing. Heavy snow had been falling and the ground may have been loosened by the quake. On Mount Everest today, all climbers are now off the Nepalese side of the mountain after an avalanche triggered by the earthquake slammed into base camp. Nick Chinsky and his wife Sandy survived the avalanche at the base camp on Mount Everest. He joins us now by Skype. Nick, we understand the remaining hikers who had been trapped on the mountain have been rescued. Can you tell us anything about their condition?
They all came down fairly unscathed. I think they were more mentally shaken by the events that happened down here because many of them have lost friends in the avalanche and or close members of their team in the avalanche, either injured or fatality. So I think they had dodged a bullet, so to speak, by being up there, but coming back for them certainly wasn't easy either.
Are you and your team able to help the others at base camp?
We've done a few things. The first thing we did was the day of the avalanche, opened up our camp to any sort of walking wounded, sort of injuries that weren't life-threatening. We had a camp below us who had was closer to the scene where they had opened up their camp to the more critically. So all of us here who have survived and where our camps have survived fairly well have been working to ease the pain for a number of people. And now that the people have come down from camps 1 and 2, and there's almost 70 of them, we're also housing almost 20 of them here in our mess tent as well, as they spend time going through the debris where their camp used to be and collecting their goods, whatever they can find, and start preparing and thinking about leaving base camp.
Well, now I know that you and your wife survived the avalanche. Take us back. Can you tell us what happened?
Pretty scary. I mean, it certainly wasn't anything that we were prepared for, and it was sort of a normal Saturday morning, or sort of just relaxing, chilling out, and the ground started to shake, and everything after that, was moving a million miles a second. Once we saw the size of that tidal wave of snow heading up for us, we just hunkered down in that tent and each other and zipped ourselves up as tight as we could and just started praying that we were going to live through this. But it was very uncertain. I mean, the wind and the snow shook and tore at our tent. We had no idea if we were going to get lifted off the ground and thrown into a neighboring cliff or ridge or who knows what, or even worse, that something would land on top of us, either another tent or a big rock, or who knew. So it was a very, very scary couple of minutes surviving through that.
When those minutes were over, what did you do immediately following it?
Well, we got out of that tent with whatever we could grab. We sort of made our way down to a much bigger communal tent that we have, and we sort of met everybody from our team there. We probably spent 15, 20 minutes being very quiet, listening, because many times one avalanche will set off subsequent avalanches, and we wanted to make sure that we were aware of what if anything, was going to come at us again.
Oh, thank you so much, Nick Chinsky. Praying for you. God bless you for taking the time to talk to us. Nigeria's military says it has rescued nearly 300 girls and women from Boko Haram. Among those rescued are 200 girls and 93 women, but none of them are from the Chibok girls who were kidnapped 1 year ago. You may remember nearly 300 schoolgirls were kidnapped in northeastern Nigeria by Boko Haram in April of 2014. Dozens of the girls escaped on their own, but 219 remain missing. A shipping vessel flying the flag of the Marshall Islands was seized by Iranian forces Tuesday. Iran's Revolutionary Guard fired warning shots to force the ship to surrender. That prompted the U.S. to dispatch a destroyer and a plane to monitor the incident.
The IRGC Navy patrol craft fired shots across the Maersk Tigris's bow. The vessel issued a distress call, which was received by U.S. forces. Our Navy forces are monitoring the situation with the Maersk Tigris.
This all took place in the Strait of Hormuz, which is the export route for about 1/5 of the world's oil. Iran has threatened to block the strait before, which could spark a military conflict. The incident comes as President Obama pushes ahead with plans to cut a nuclear deal with Iran. The number of deportations under the Obama administration is steadily decreasing this year. This could mean fewest number of immigrants deported in nearly a decade. As of mid-April, federal immigration officials have sent home about 127,000 people. That's about 20,000 people a month since the start of the fiscal year in October. At the current pace, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is on track to remove the fewest number of immigrants since President Bush's administration deported nearly 208,000 people back in 2006. Coming up, it is time for the church to rise. That's a message one pastor is sending about the unrest in Baltimore. Hear what he's proposing next. Leaders of the church are on the ground in Baltimore working to restore peace. As we reported earlier in the newscast, violent protests and riots slowed down a bit, but tensions are still high. CBN News' Mark Martin spoke with Bishop Angel Nunez from Baltimore's bilingual church about that unrest.
Bishop Nunez, your church is in the heart of where a lot of the violence and unrest is unfolding. Tell us, what have the past couple of days been like?
Well, it has been very trying because the youth are calling out for no justice, no peace, but we are calling out for justice and peace. There's a lot of broken lives. There's a lot of hurting people. They're angry. They're venting. Last night I was at Ground Zero, actually, there for quite some time. And they're just very angry, and they're destroying things around them, which is extremely disappointing to us.
There was a post on your church's social media page. It said, "I have been telling you for years that something was going to happen in Baltimore. Well, here it is, and it's time for the army of God to rise up." Can you explain what inspired that post?
Yes, for many years I have been speaking in this region that the time is going to come, that a crisis is going to come to the area where it will provoke, it will cause the church to put aside its agendas and to come together as one to respond to that crisis. It has been an effort that has started preaching it. Right now, by the grace of God, I lead what we call the multicultural prayer movement, and we have over 400 churches that have come together, put aside their agendas. I'm talking about black churches, white churches, Hispanic, Asian, even African churches that we've come together. I just finished a breakfast with over 120 pastors right here in our church, and we are crying out, the church needs to be united.
Church leaders are doing a lot on the ground in Baltimore. Do you feel like the lines are blurred when it comes to the separation of church and state in situations like this?
Well, you know, it's funny because they tell us not to pray in the name of Jesus. They forbid us to lift up his name. We're fighting a case in the Supreme Court for traditional marriage. Nobody wants to know about Jesus. But now that, excuse my phrase, that all hell has broken loose, now everybody wants the church.
The mayor of Baltimore made some pretty controversial comments about giving people permission, quote, destroy the city. Do you think she should be coming under fire for making that statement?
I just think that she's under a lot of pressure. I've been in meetings with her. I've done press conferences with her. She's under a lot of pressure. I would not be surprised if it was just a mix-up of words. It is really, really bad here. And so I would look at it from that angle.
Let's talk about what's next. What role does the church play in helping to heal racial tensions and create change?
Well, we're doing three things in particular. Number one is we here in Baltimore have what we call Bless Baltimore Motorcade, which is that the police department identifies the worst 9 districts or worst 9 hotspots in the entire city. In each one of those 9 spots, we host a service, and then we bring a caravan of intercessors that have surrounded the entire city. They get out of the caravans, they join the service, and we pray for the entire region. Once that is over, then the pastors, the leaders go out into the community to minister to the people. That's one. The other thing we do is Days of Hope, where we have festivals, where we feed the people, we serve the people, we have entertainment, we have medical information, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third thing that we're doing now is called the Reconciled Church, where national leaders are coming together. Bishop Harry Jackson is one, and we are working to address this issue because it's not just a Baltimore issue. It is a nationwide issue. This is national. The nation is about to explode.
All right, Bishop Angel Nunez, the pastor of the Bilingual Church in Baltimore, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Operation Blessing is giving hope and life to children in Haiti. On a spring day after the 2010 earthquake, Mika was left in a shoebox at the doors of Zami Beni Children's Home in Port-au-Prince. She was 1 week old and close to death. In the following weeks, caregivers nursed Mika back to health. She is now a healthy 5-year-old, and many of the children at Zami Beni, a home founded in 2010, are as well. That home was founded in partnership with Operation Blessing. It has since grown and expanded to provide round-the-clock care for the children. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to its website, that is ob.org. A film directed by an executive at Operation Blessing won the Best Documentary Short Award at the Tribeca Film Festival. It's called Body Team 12, and it follows the team tasked with collecting the dead at the height of the Ebola outbreak.
The Ebola outbreak was raging in West Africa. People in Liberia, where I was, were so anxious. No one even wanted to touch their family or friends or neighbors because of the fear. And yet you had these brave young Liberians, as I said, who were risking everything despite the threat to go into these situations and work in just really, really tough, extreme conditions. Not only were they removing bodies, they were coming up with resistance from the families who wanted to keep the bodies for a proper burial. So it was a dangerous job for them. It was really tough work. And so I wanted to make this film as a tribute to their bravery.
David Darg says the lead character in the film talks about her faith in God and how it got her through the trial. Darg and his team are now working to raise money for the children orphaned by that virus. Stay with us. We are coming right back. And your Wednesday word is patience. We know that God's timing is not our own, so we need to line our timing with His, and that should be our prayer in this time. Here's a look we want to remind you to do. Remember to be patient and know that God is working things out. Be patient and wait for what no one is expecting. God always does above what we can think. That's going to do it now for CBN Newswatch. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.